How's the sound? Okay, starting a little bit early. Well, it's a little bit late actually. Apparently Restream is having issues lately where I have to reboot the computer before I can actually stream. But I'll figure that out some other time. So today I was going to go over a little bit more on the SKR E3 Dip version 1.0. I showed last night how to do the TMC 2209. So I'm going to try the actual stepper for SPY next, but I got to find it. But if you have any questions, post them in the chat, and I'll see if I can do those as well. So let me just swap these in. That's the TMC 2130. And I'll zoom in on it real quick here. And hopefully I can focus a little on it. There we go. But essentially we're looking for the enable pin, which is in the bottom left hand corner. That's the only reason I zoom in usually now. So I'm going to set this up in just a second. Let me just check on the chat. Okay, looks like we got a couple people in here, so let's get started. So today we're going to do the TMC 2130 for SPY on the E3 Dip. And I found out last night you got to use the LCD TFT display to simplify this, because if you have it plugged in with USB, it doesn't function properly. whereas on the SKR version 1.4 you can move the jumper for where the power source is. On this you can't. It automatically powers through the USB, so you're stuck using the TFT display unless I can find a way around that problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the web browser so you can see what I'm doing. And inside the browser, I'm going to search on BTT GitHub E3 Dip. And I'm going to go to that link. And what we need to know from this is how to connect it. So we're going to go to the manual. And inside the manual, verify that it's your board. It looks the same. And then we're going to scroll down and find really quick what those jumper settings are. So right about here we have our SPY mode. So it says keep all the jumpers as they are. So the other row over here of jumpers is not used. So we're going to go back over to the board. And we're going to actually install this. And if you look on the underneath side, you can see the pin order. So that's the order we need to install this over here. So that's all we have to do. I'm going to install the stepper motor thing right here. And then I'm also going to hook up the power, but it's unplugged. So this will be off to the side. So I've marked red and black for where the power source and ground sources are. So I'm going to tighten these down. They have ferrule connectors. And these ferrule connectors are essentially a way to keep things safe. I highly recommend getting them. If you'd like, I can put Amazon affiliate links in the description for your convenience. But the other thing we have to do now is actually get the drive out. So I'm going to pop this open, and I'm actually going to use this to load the firmware. So I'm going to find the slot for it and pop it in. And then I'm going to place this inside the computer. And then we'll figure out what's going on in VS Code. Inside VS Code, let me just bring it up so I can see it. We're going to click on the Explorer, open a folder. We're going to go to our Downloads folder, then our Marlin folder, then our next Marlin folder, and then select the folder. Inside here, like always, we're going to go to the Marlin folder, the source folder, core, then boards.h. Inside the header file for boards, we're going to search on E3 underscore DIP for dip. And we're going to verify that this is for our board type over here. Then we'll click on this to highlight it, right click, and we'll copy that. Then we'll close out of boards.h. We'll minimize core and source, then go to configuration.h. And we'll search on motherboard like normal. Then we'll paste it over where the ramps is. And we'll change the serial port here to -1. And because we need to use the display, because if we use the actual USB connection, this type of stepper won't work properly, we need to remove the comment over here. And we're going to change this second serial port to 2. And I'll show you how that works in a moment. So now that we have that set, we need to set the steppers. So we're going to search on A4988. And down here, we're going to remove the comment for the for the X stepper so that we can see what's going on. And then we're going to use the TMC 2130. I just had to find it. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to paste it over where the A4988 is. Then down below, there's actual steps that you can do. So I'll show you how it's normally set up. I've done this about a dozen times, but I have to overemphasize it. So I'm going to search on 800. And that'll bring me to the X current. We're going to leave it at 800 for the moment. we're going to leave it, well, we can change this. So let me show you what's going on here. So 16 is tied to 80. So if you change 80 to 160, then you have to change 16 to 32. And so on and so forth, counting up by doubling it. So I'll show you one more time. So if you're going to go to 320, that means that this has to go to 64. So I'm going to leave that alone for now. Now we're going to search on software spy, I think it is, or spy software. We'll see. So let's try spy first. Here it is. So down here for TMC use spy, we need to remove the comment so we can activate it. And we're also going to do sensorless homing. So first I want to show you the debug. So I'm going to search on TMC underscore debug. And I need to remove the comment for this and the other one. So let's find the other one, which is right here. Both of these need to be enabled to use the G code M122, and there are other G codes. So let's go back up and find the other one. There are these G codes over here that I missed last night when I was talking about it. These will enable you to do other things like setting things on the fly or seeing what's going on with their temperature conditions and stuff like that. I generally forget about these only because I don't use them that often, but I'm not going to talk too much about those right now. So the next thing that I want to do is set up sensorless homing. So I'm going to search on sensorless. And right here is where we're going to use it. So the default setting for this is 8. And the range that you can use that is -64 to 63. I'm going to leave it at 8 at the moment just to see if it works. I can't remember what the exact value is, but we'll find out. So now that we've got all that set, we need to set up the environment in platform IO. So we need to search on dip underscore E3. And hopefully this will bring us, I'm doing it backwards, I'm sorry, it's E3 Dip. It'll bring us to where we need to be. So in this case, this is what we're going to use. Now they do show a second one for USB. So I'm going to try this because last night I didn't try it. And it might help us alleviate some of the issues. We may even be able to use the USB. But no promises. So I'm going to paste that there. Then I'm going to click the checkbox for now and let that compile, and hopefully it won't fail. So I'm going to check on the chat real quick. Okay, does anybody have any questions they want to talk about? I know there's a BL Touch question floating out there. Unfortunately, I don't have it set up right now, but I have notes that I might be able to refer to. So it looks like we have an issue with the compile here where it says requires X minimum inverting to equal true. So I'm going to copy this and see if I can find it, because they're talking about that on config.h probably. So let's change this to true for the moment. It's weird that they have you switch it, but okay. So let's try and compile now. Now this might take a second. It might be pretty quick, but we'll see. So once this completes, we gotta load it like we normally would load like a SKR Pro. So I'm gonna go over to .pio, build, the folder for the chipset. Then I'm gonna find the firmware.bin. I'm gonna right click on that and say reveal in Explorer. Inside Explorer, inside Explorer, let me make sure you can see what I'm doing. What we're gonna do is we're going to actually right click on this and we're gonna send it to our USB drive. Now our USB drive is the actual current firmware and firmware.bin. This file generally doesn't matter unless you want to reload your firmware, so we can just delete it for now, and it will recreate that after this loads. So I'm going to pop this out and bring it back to the desktop so you can see what I'm doing. So on the desktop, I'm going to actually pop this out for the moment, and I'm going to place it in here, and then we'll try the USB load and see how that works out. If we get connectivity with this, then we'll go with it. If we don't, then we won't. So right now it's not powering up. So let me double check the power on my side. It has power. So let me check the cables. They're good. So I think what's occurring is it's disabled the USB, but this is kind of odd to me. So let me try unplugging this again. I'm just checking the connections because I've never seen the USB go out. Okay, well, we're gonna power it up and see what happens. So now the board is actually powered, but I don't see a flashing light. And I don't hear any kind of buzzer. So something might be wrong. Or we may have to load the other build. So it appears there's something wrong that I don't understand yet. So let me check first the USB cable. I'll plug it into something different. Nothing's happening. So I'm going to unplug it. I'm going to place that over here. I'm going to pop this drive out and see what's going on and put it inside here. Then I'll put it back in the computer and we'll see what happened. So on the computer, I'll take it over to the File Explorer. Doesn't look like it loaded, so it may not know what it is. There might be something broken on the board and I don't know it yet. So what I'm going to do is simplify this. I'm going to go back to the board for a second. I'm going to actually remove some stuff because a lot of people have run into issues where maybe something doesn't work. So I'm going to take the power out. I'm going to remove this, and I'm probably going to pop out this chip as well, and then see if it powers. Okay, so what we've discovered is it's possibly this chip. So I'm going to disconnect it again and plug this in, then reconnect it. And so it looks like the SPI chip is causing some kind of issue. So now that we know that, maybe we can't use SPI, or maybe there's something wrong with our jumpers. So I'm going to try a different set and see if it actually has that issue. Excuse me. So it seems to carry forth everywhere we plug it in. So let's try the last couple here. So essentially the issue is this stepper driver. It might be that it's broken. So now that we're done with that, I'm going to try another stepper driver just to make sure. Hopefully it's a fresh one. So what I'm going to try is the TMC 5160 and see if it works. So essentially we have to line it up correctly. So I'm going to put it first in this slot and then plug it in. Now that appears to work. So there could be something wrong with the stepper or the diag pins on it. So let's grab a different one. It's going to take me a second to dig one out. Let's see what we got here. So these are some really old ones that I have on hand. They're missing pins, so they're kind of useless. Okay. I know I have another container of these someplace. It's going to take me a second only because I'm not sure where I put them. They might be in a printer. Let's see what we got here. Nope, nope. Starting to look like I need to order some. Wow. I guess I'll have to do that. I thought I had another container of them. I have some really old ones, but these don't have the diag pins on them on the right side. This one is actually an older version, and you can see that it's missing pins right here. So it's kind of hard or not safe to use. So let me see if I've got another one here. Nope, same. Yeah, that's not a smart idea on my part. So apparently I have them, I just don't know where they are. So let me dig around here for a second more and see if I can find them. And then I'll check on the chat while I'm doing that. Yeah, I wish it was the wrong disc format. Apparently it's not. The issue is something's being shorted with the stepper, or there's something power-wise not configured right. But I should have these steppers lying around. I'm just wondering, maybe I left them in a board. Okay, I'm halfway through checking boards, and I don't see them. Let's see what's going on in this drawer. And apparently my normal drawers that I go through for this, they're not in there. That's awesome. Let's just make sure they didn't fall. So I guess I can't show you that today, but I will show you later in the week. So we'll go with the TMC for now. And I'll show you what happens with the drive. So this will work now. So let me bring you back over to the desktop if I'm not there. Okay. So I'm going to put the drive back in, and I'm going to plug this in. And now it's flashing. The only problem is we're flashing for the wrong stepper, so we can fix that. So let's fix that real quick. I'm going to unplug this, pop this out. You'll see that the actual firmware is updated. we'll go back into the firmware and we'll fix this real quick. So inside here, you're going to go to configuration.h. You're going to search on A4988 to get you in the neighborhood. And we'll change this to 5160. There we go. And then we'll just compile again. I'll check on the chat while that's going on. Okay, it's going to compile kind of quick, so I'm going to power cycle the camera while this is going on. And then we go back to the platform IO folder, right click, reveal and explore, right click on the file, send to, and we'll send it to our drive. And like I said earlier, that's what happens when a firmware load actually occurs, so we're just going to delete it for now. If you wanted to use that again, you'd rename it to firmware.bin and it would load the same, and then change to firmware.cur. So I'm going to pull the drive out, and then I'm going to insert it into the board. So we'll take this, we'll plug it in here, and you'll see it loading over here. And then we'll check to see if it actually connects via USB. I know that it's going to work in Pronterface, but I'm wondering if we can see the actual drive. So I'm going to go over to the desktop for a second and pull up the drive. So there's no drive there, so that's not working. So let's go back over, and we're going to have to connect the actual display. In this case, I do have Wi-Fi on it, but I don't want to talk about Wi-Fi only because it exposes a little bit about my computer I don't want to show. So I'm going to show you how to connect this. It's going to be right down here for this particular model. And you'll just plug it in like so. And this model actually is the TFT V3 by Big Tree Tech. And then to connect this over here, you've got this one hanging one. It's actually going to be this way, so the hanging one over here. So I'll plug that in first, then I'll plug this in. And I'll show you that it works with USB power first. And then what I'll do is I'll actually power it the other way. That's just to test to make sure this comes on. And this has custom logos on it that I did in a previous live stream about 2 months ago maybe. So I'm going to slide these back in and tighten them down. And we're going to power it with direct power. So let me move that over. I'm going to throw in the power. Let me move this to the center just in case. It won't have sensorless homing. So we could see sparks. I doubt it, but you never know. So to move this, what we're going to do is we're going to go to menu. Then we're going to find movement, move. And we're going to increase the steps so it's more obvious to 10 millimeters. And then move it to the right. And it's not moving because it's not connected. So I'm going to gingerly plug that in. Should do that when the power's off. Then I'll move it. And I'll move it the other way. So we know it works. If we were to do this through USB, which I'll show you right now, I'll disconnect the power, reconnect the USB, and let's try it through here. This is going to be a little bit messy probably. Or maybe it'll move the same. But UART had issues. So I'm going to go to Pronterface. Inside Pronterface, I need to connect to it. So we're going to run into an issue. So I got to show you how to deal with that because we may not have it in the drop-down. It might be this one. Let's see what happens. It is not. So we're going to go to Device Manager. Hang on a second. Inside Device Manager, we'll check to see what the port number is. It's 5. So we'll close out of this. We'll change this to COM port 5. Then we'll try and connect again. And now it says connecting, printer is now online. So what we're going to do is see if we can move this around and not make a mess. So I'm going to move it 10. And 10 the other way. And apparently it doesn't move at all. So let's see if we can probe to see what's going on. M119 says open and triggered, even though there's nothing connected. So these should all be actually open or triggered. So I'm guessing that should be triggered, but they might have it wired differently. So let's check the actual stepper with M122. It says the stepper's okay. So the main issue that we're having is maybe sensorless homing is causing an issue, because I don't see it moving. So let's try that. So I'm going to disconnect, and then I'm going to disconnect the power. And we'll go over to VS Code and see if we can correct that. So inside VS Code, we're going to search on sensorless homing, which is right in front of us. We'll comment it back out. So this is now deactivated. And we'll rebuild it real quick. And then I'll check on the chat. It's awfully quiet in the chat today. I'm hoping you can hear me. So once this rebuilds, what we'll do is we'll send it back over to the drive. So I got to go back over to the desktop and pop out the drive. So hang on a second. Over here, I'm going to pop this out, and place this inside this drive over here. And like I said before, I'll place these on Amazon affiliates if you need to find them. So once I have that in the drive, I'm going to go back over to the desktop. And here, what we're going to do is we're going to right click on firmware.bin and reveal and explorer, then right click again and send to the drive. Then we can verify it's there. That's the previous load. That's the one we're working with. So I'm going to pop this out, go back over to the desktop so you can see what I'm doing, and then I'm going to pop this back in. And hopefully this will work, but the problem is this is probably the problem. So it's flashing right now, so it's loading. And then I'll pop this back in and see if it actually does anything. So let's go over to Pronterface. Inside Pronterface, we'll connect. It says we're online. We'll check the status real quick. Looks like we're okay. So let's try and move. And it's not moving. So let's disconnect. We'll power it down for a second. We'll pull the USB. We'll plug it back in. And then we'll try it again. So inside here, sorry, you couldn't see Pronterface. I forgot to move the screen. But if you go to menu, move, change this to 10, then move, it works perfectly fine. So there's something associated with this cable that I do not understand yet. So that's part of the reason I probably stopped doing tutorials on it after the very first basics one, is that I didn't understand what was going on with the USB. I now know that that's related to the voltage interrupting these steppers. So I think it works normal with the other steppers, but I don't think it works normal with the TMC steppers because they're software controlled. So let's see what we got for questions here. Well, we got no questions yet, so maybe I'll try end stops on this to see if they work. So if we go over to the actual diagram for the pinouts, I'll show you what I'm thinking I want to try here because I don't understand the board fully yet. So I'm going to go to my browser and I'm going to scroll back up to where it has the pinouts, and we're going to look for the end stop. So we have an end stop here. It says E0 stop, and then it has a probe, and then it has servo. That's probably possibly related to the BL Touch. So let's check to see if we can do the X end stop, the Y end stop, or the Z end stop. Now there seems to be a problem with this, and that there's only 2 pins to work with. So if we look over here for the X end stop, we see ground and PC1. PC1 is the pin, and ground is the other one. So we got to use a 2-pin end stop. So I'm going to pull one out and try it here. This is actually a little bit more simple than most. So I'm going to transition over to here, and we need to follow what we saw. So on the left hand side it's going to be the ground, and on the right it's going to be the voltage, being the signal pin. So now that we have that connected, let's test the end stop for the X end stop. So we can do that actually in Pronterface, so I'll show you that real quick. Or at least I hope I can. So I'm going to connect the USB as power. And then I'll keep the end stop nearby over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, connect to the device, do an M119. This will say what the current status of the end stops is. And they're all triggered. So I'm going to click down on this, and then do it again, and now it's open. So it's backwards from what we think it should be. So we can correct that. So I'll show you how to do that real quick. I think a couple of people have already seen this before. So let's see, if we go to VS Code, inside VS Code, we need to do a search on the configuration.h, and we have to look for inverting. So we're going to search on invert. And what we're trying to invert is actually the end stop. This may cause issues with what they wanted for SPI. So let's see what happens. So invert dir is not what we're looking for. We're actually looking for the end stop, and I'm not finding it very quick. So I'm going to scroll to the top. I'm going to search on end stop. And right here we have the end stop functionality. You can see right here, those are the ones that we have set. So if we change this to true, we might get an issue, or excuse me, false. We might get an issue with actual compiling. So I don't know why that is, but it's probably a bug. But let's see what happens. So I'm going to click over here to compile. This may take a few seconds. Hopefully it doesn't go all red right away. And it might have been because sensorless homing was the reason that was causing that failure with the invert. So let's reload that real quick. So I'm going to go back over to the bench for a second. I'm going to disconnect this, pop this out, pop in the end stop into here, and then put this into the computer. Give it a second to get everything set up. We'll go over to here for a sec. This is VS Code. And then we're going to right click on firmware.bin, reveal and explore. Then we'll right click again and we'll send it to the D drive. Once it's on the D drive, we're all good to go. So I'll pop it out and go back to the actual workbench and drop this in. Then we'll power it up and we'll check the end stop again. Hopefully that wasn't a funky sound. I'm doing this on USB power by design because it's just safer to test. So inside Pronterface, we'll reconnect. So I may have to disconnect, reconnect there. I'll do the code. Now it says open. Now if I click it and I do it again, now it says triggered. If I let it go, it says open. So it works correctly now. Now we can try and test the other ones. So a quick way to do that is to disconnect here. We haven't made any changes. I'm going to pull the USB power for a second. Go over one more slot. Hopefully I'm not plugging in backwards, but we can always check that in the browser. And if you see here in the browser, the next one over is the Y, and it has a pin to the right, so we're all good. Same with Z. So we'll go back to Pronterface. I'll reconnect the USB for a second. Then I'll do a M119 as soon as we're connected. There we go. So I'll check it. It says open. I'll click it. Check it again. It's closed. Open it. Do it again. It's open. So it works fine. So we can do the same with the other one. So I'll just pull the power for a second. I'll move it over one. Plug it in. Disconnect, connect. It says open. I'll click it. Do it again. It says triggered. Open it. Open. So it's very simple to check those. That's usually one of the things I run through when I check things on a board, just to see if it works, but you can see that it's working quite fine. So let me check on the chat. Okay, it's gotten rather quiet in the chat. But if you want to see how to do it from the actual panel, I'll show you that real quick. So if we go over to the workbench for a second, and you want to check the status of your end stop, one of the ways you can do it is you can go to Menu, then you can go to Custom, it might take me a second, Terminal. You can type M119 and then send. And that'll show you the status of your end stops. It's kind of cool. Lightens up the load on a computer, but you're still going to have to load your actual build through probably the USB or SD card over here. So, does anybody have any questions on different board types? Because this one's going to be very simple. Well, it seems kind of quiet today. Okay, well, let's read through the manual for a second. See if we can find anything that's different. So inside here, we know there are fans. We can test those. We may have to specify them, but we can see that there's 2-pin fans. But if we go down here, we can see that the first one says 12 volts ground, or excuse me, the second one being fan 1 is 12 volts ground, so that's always running when power is applied. Then you have the other one that says 12 volts or 24 volts, and then it's got a pin number. So this one is actually controllable because of the pin. So that's something that's interesting to understand. The SWD is a way to load software through these pins up here. Let's see what else we got. We've got the output power for our board located right here. Let's let's see, it says HB and then it says HE. So this is probably heat bed and then hot end. I'm not sure what this power output is, but I'm guessing it's just they're routing the power from the initial power over to here. But you can check that with the multimeter. But if you look at the board from a distance, you notice that this is actually supposed to be over here. And there's just something weird with their diagram. These are one and the same, meaning that this exists over on the left. I don't know why they put it right here. It's just a great way to confuse me and you. And then we have our TFT. I think they give a hint right here that the reset pin is here, but there's a reset button probably too. I usually don't use it, I just unplug it because I don't like to touch the board when it's energized. And then we have SPI pins, so this we might be able to use for serial, peripheral, interface 1. There might be a second one on this board, as I realized last night, which is up here, motor SPI. So this might be for the controlling of the addressing of each one of these through the SPI pin or CS pin. And CS means chip select, so it's like an address box or mailbox. I'll show you where that's located. So if we go over to VS Code, this is actually outlined in VS Code for us. So if we go to the, let's see, source pins, and then we find our board type, which is hopefully down in here. It's going to take me a second to find it because I don't know exactly where it is. We're looking for the E3 Dip. So I don't see it in that folder. Well, it might be in this folder. It's just a little bit longer than I thought. But it's okay to scream out that you see it. I might not see it initially while I'm looking. Oy. All I'm doing right now is looking for the pins file, so it seems like I'm doing something that's confusing. But let's see if we can find it. It's actually the very first one. Sorry about that. So right here is the pins file. And my original thought, I gotta remember what it was, but it was pointing out what those actual pins are. So let's go over and check where I was in the browser. So I was talking about these pins up here and the chip select. So I'll show you what that means. So let me bring it back to VS Code. Inside VS Code, down here, you'll see CS. That means chip select. So that's pointing to a pin, which is in this case a mailbox or address box to activate what we're working with. And then these are the pins that normally run it. So enable is meaning that it's on probably. Step means that apply current maybe. And then direction is either positive or negative, I'm guessing. But these are just guesses. But that's how it's run. It's just pulses of digital signals. So let me check on the chat real quick. Oh, still quiet. Wow. Can everybody hear me? It's just really weird when I hear a very quiet chat. Or how about this? If you don't mind, tell me where you're from. Maybe I can make it more comfortable in the chat. I know we've got one person from Canada. Maybe a couple. Okay, well, bonsoir ça va, or bonjour ça va. Sorry, my French is horrible, so. Let's see, what else can we talk about on this board that's easy to talk about? We could talk about the BL Touch on it, but I'm going to show you a trick with this. Guten Tag. Down here, or Guten Abend, it might be later in the day, sorry. Let's see. Down here we have some stuff for the BL Touch. I don't know if you can see what I'm pointing at. You can't, so let me do that again. Down here we have a couple of pins that we need to understand. Some of them might be thermistors. So let's go back over here and see what they are. So it says fan, then we have E0 stop. I'm guessing E0 stop is an end stop, or it's a runout sensor for filament, which is more likely. So it's got 3 pins. It's probably got voltage, ground, and signal. So let me look down below and see where it is. Okay, it's ground, voltage, and signal. This might be backwards from normal, because most end stops or runout sensors function on a different set of pins, so this might be scrambled. Let me see if I can find an end stop real quick. Trying to find an example that makes sense. So I'll show you graphically what's going on as soon as I find the end stop. Here it is. So on the workbench, this is an end stop. Essentially, a runout sensor is an end stop. It's just inside a plastic container. So when you run the filament by it, mechanically it's compressed. And when the filament runs out, it pops up. This is about $1.50 if you just buy one, not in bulk. And the actual colors are signal, ground, voltage. That's why I'm confused why they changed the order of these. But you can change the order over here to address that with jumpers, or you can rewire them by popping them out of the DuPont connector. But essentially, this is what your runout sensor is. I know they charge $20 for it. I don't know why. You can print your own and then just drop it in. I've actually made designs on Thingiverse for it that a couple of people have used. But as you can see, this is not right. So I'll show you what I mean. So right here, it's voltage, ground, signal. And if we go back to the browser, they have it as ground, signal, voltage. So the wiring is scrambled. Then let's see, the servo, that looks like it's going to be signal, ground, voltage. That may be correct because it's similar to an end stop. So I'd have to look at a servo. Let me see if I have one nearby. I may be able to find one. Here we go. So I'll show you this real quick. So on here they have yellow, orange, and brown. I think yellow is signal, orange is voltage, and brown is ground. And we can confirm that by looking up the data sheet for it. And it's a good habit to always look up your data sheet. I'm horrible at it, but we'll look this one up right now. This is an EasyMax ES08MA2 analog servo. Analog and digital will work in this situation. This might not work as well, but let's see what we've got. So if I go over to the browser and I look for data sheet, excuse me, servo, and then do ES08MA2 analog servo. Hopefully we'll find it. So I guess there's a metal gear on this, which there is. I'll show you that in a second, but this is a higher end servo, meaning that the gears are metal. But let's see if there's a data sheet or a quasi one. So this one requires a little bit higher voltage. So it's not real good. We function at 5 volts. So this is probably not an optimal one to use on this. But I'm looking for the wiring. And apparently they're not showing it, which is awesome. So let's go back and see if there's any other information on the web about it. So let's see. Maybe it'll have it here. I have to scan through and see if they actually write anything on it. And they're not really giving any information, so let's try the other one. Well, the wiring is slightly different. It's more red and black, so I guess that's helpful. And there's some kind of video on how to use it. Let's see, additional information. Let's try that. That's real helpful. So essentially I know what the colors are. With servos you can't do much damage to either your board or to the servo. If you plug it in backwards, it just won't work. But in this case, I wish they had better documentation. On other servos I've done, we found better documentation, but this is getting kind of sad, so we're going to move back to the desktop, I guess. But the servo will connect right over in here, and we can verify the wiring. So we can go over to the browser again and go back to the pinout diagram, which is in hardware pins, and we can see it right here. So the wiring order in this case is signal, ground, voltage. So if we look at the cabling, whoops, sorry, I didn't swap that over there. It says signal, ground, voltage. So if we go back and look at the wire, we can see what the issue is. So on the workbench, it's going signal, voltage, ground, based on the wire colors. So you would have to swap them in the DuPont connector in this case, or use jumpers. So let me see what else we can find here. If we were to look at the browser again, apparently my studio mode is broken. So let's do it this way. So we've got a probe. That's probably going to be used for the BL Touch, but with my experience using that doesn't work very well. So I've moved over to the Z-Min end stop as a way to work with it for the BL Touch. There's a little bit of adjustment in the firmware, but what you can do is you can move your X carriage midway up on your Z axis, and when you home you can click it with your finger. If it doesn't work, unplug it. Down here we can see thermistors. So we've got these tell temperatures. So we have the hot, or excuse me, the heat bed, or the hot, and I don't know why they said O, but it's probably hot N0. So thermistor hot, or heat bed, excuse me, thermistor hot 0. Makes total sense to me, but at least you understand what they're talking about, kind of. And then over here is the output power for them to run them. Now, normally I don't use this board for the Ender 3, but that's what it's designed for. It could probably also be a Prusa. The limitations are you have one extruder. I like to have two, which I know is weird, but if you don't use the second one, you can always use it to match up to your Z using firmware, so that you can have an additional single step or a single step driver for your Z axis. On the Ender 3, obviously it's X, Y, Z, so it matches up perfectly. And for the hot end, it's actually a better board than what they have in there because it's 32-bit. But let me go check on the chat real quick. Yeah, it might have been in the description. Yeah, the SKR 1.4, I've done a lot of tutorials on. A lot of people like them. I may do a retrospective one on the basics tutorial again, because I don't think a lot of people know that I have tutorials in addition to that. So that might be helpful, just to redirect them to the list of 20 or 30 tutorials that have also been done on it, because they ask in the basic tutorial, so it might make their lives easier. I may list them. I also have to update some tutorials for the SKR 1.4. Yeah, that's what I've heard. The SKR 1.4 with the TFT display, when I originally did the tutorial, did not have an existing config file. So I kind of have to update that because it's confusing. What pin changes need to be done in VS Code for Zmin? If you're talking about the BL Touch, I think I know what they are, but let's see if we can take a look real quick. There's going to be other things you're going to have to change, because that configuration is completely different from what I've done in the past. So if you're in configuration.h, initially what you're going to search for, let me get to the top, is you're going to search for the, originally the way that I did this, sorry, is I would search for num servos. And the problem with this is always powered now, so you don't have to turn it on. You can ignore that because there's only one servo on the SKR. You can tell that the people that emulated my tutorials are using that just because they don't know it, you don't need it. So I made like 8 tutorials within the last 5 years, and they always copy this. But it's hilarious to me. I know you guys don't care. But don't enable it because it's already got power. So up here, you're going to search on BL Touch. And as you can tell right here, what you need to do is enable that. And then there's going to be other things that you're going to have to address. Don't touch fixed mount. Don't touch nozzle probe or anything like that. This is one of the things where you can say define Z minimum probe pin. So in this case, for the SKR 1.4, it's not going to be 32. This is the default value for the ramps board, as they say to the right. So to fix that, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go over to your pinout for this. So let me minimize this over here, and it's the LPC 1768 or 9, depending upon if it's a turbo or not. But there's also a confusing thing they do. If you look for the turbo over here for the SKR, if I can find it, apparently I'm not seeing it, which is just maybe me. Oh, there it is. It's making a reference to an include, meaning it's concatenating something onto it, and it's pointing to the SKR version 1.4, which means they share pins, and that's why it's doing that. So you have to go back over to here to find it. This is kind of like a scavenger hunt. click here, and then you can look for the BL touch in here or the X minimum. These are diag pins that's used for stepping. Those are the CS pins that I was talking about before. So this might be the X minimum end stop, but to confirm that, because they're using TMC stall guard, this may be the pin, but we can confirm it several different ways, and I'll show you those one at a time. So they do talk about the end stops right here. So we're looking for Z minimum. So the Z minimum is probably P1_27, and it matches here, but we can go to the diagram as well. So I'll show you that real quick, because I like to confirm like a bunch of different ways. So we have to go and find the SKR board over here on Big Tree Tech, which is right on the right hand side. It's in here, and then we're going to go to hardware, and then we're going to go to pins. And so to confirm what we're working with is, you can see Z minus stop. So it's 1.27, which equates to P1_27. So that's the pin. So that's what you're going to fill in VS Code that I took a long route to explain. So let's get back to that. So if you're in configuration.h, that's going to be, this value is going to be reflected as this. So you're going to copy that. You're going to go over here. You're going to remove the comment. And then you're going to paste that value. That's most of what you're going to do for your configuration. There may be other things that you have to do. I have to look up the rest, but there's a bunch of little small stuff that you can find usually doing file compares. So if you can find a printer in their examples file and then compare them, but you have to set your leveling type. So that's where it gets confusing, because you have to look up the G codes to actually work with it. So let's see if I can find that real quick. It's bed leveling, I think. This might take a second. Whoop, that's not gonna help. There we go. Bed leveling, the one that I would go with is probably mesh or universal bed leveling. I think are the most stable ones. But I think mesh is the one that works the best, or this one, I can't remember. It might also be linear bed leveling, I can't remember, but there are different styles. You have to remove the actual comment to enable it, and then there might be additional settings down in here that you need to find. You also need to enable EEPROM, so that's another thing that you have to do. So it's EEPROM, and down here I think it's disabled by default, so you need to enable that as well. And then there's additional things for the bed that I was talking about a second ago, and that's where the edges are for it. So there's a lot of work to do it. That's why I'm trying to redo the tutorial so it's more understandable. But it's like 10 things you have to configure. So I know it's going to be confusing unless I figure them out. I have them written down. I just haven't had a chance to actually work on the tutorial because I've been building this recording station to make things easier for me to record and make it more fluid. But let me go back to the comments because I've been babbling for a while. I hope that helps a little. I think I've covered 75% of bed leveling in there, minus the commands. I think I did a stream on it where I showed the bed leveling. I can't remember which one it was, but it was about a month and a half ago, maybe. So, do you have any other questions today of subject matter that I haven't covered in a while that you really want to see other than bed leveling? Because that one's probably going to be a tutorial when I get more time to record it. Apparently I might have some free time from work coming up because we're between projects, so maybe I'll have more time to actually record tutorials. But that's yet to be determined. I might end up having to start another project. It was the SKR 1.3 for the BL Touch. That's similar. I know the pins are probably slightly different. Or you're saying that I'm showing the SKR 1.3. But let's go back and look at it real quick. So if I'm in the browser, this board is the SKR 1.4, so I'll go back and I'll show you the other one. For the SKR 1.4, you're going to click up here. This will bring you to the 1.4 folder. And then you'll click on hardware. Then you'll click on pins. And the pins, I think, are similar. It's 1.25 or P1_25. So if you were to look in VS Code, it would be very similar. So inside here, we would find the actual configuration file, which is probably similar. Hang on a second, let me find it. So it's probably going to share pins common, but we could see if it's in here. So it's calling out a different pin being 25, and then it's calling out 25 down here. So it is a slightly different pin. Okay. So I think, or I hope, I answered some of the questions. There's probably going to be about 4 or 5 more steps to BL Touch that I'm going to need to cover in an actual tutorial inside the printer. Obviously, I like to do stuff flat on the table because then you can see what I'm doing. So I'm probably going to have to record half the tutorial on the table to show you how to hook it up. And then the other half will show you while it's in the printer. Just because it's a labor-intensive tutorial now. When I used to do it, you could do it flat on the table and show the steps. Yeah, my BL Touch video was the SKR 1.3, Michael. That originally did work. What happened was Marlin decided to change their implementation of how that worked. So the firmware that I used no longer exists. So it kind of makes it a horrible tutorial now. I've written Marlin about it, but apparently we have a difference of opinion on how to test things. I like to unit test things, meaning broken down piece by piece. And they like to test it as a whole system. So when I approached them and said, hey, can you move it back to the way it used to be? They said no. So that's why my tutorials for some of the stuff have gone out of date all of a sudden. But if you write Marlin and ask them, maybe they'll change. I doubt it. But there's probably a reason that they did that I fully don't understand. But that's the rationale behind why my tutorials sometimes go out of date, is changes. And they're probably a better implementation is the reason. Okay, well, if there's not a lot of questions, I think I'll cut it short today. For those that do have questions and are a bit shy, let me just point out that we have something called Discord. I'll show you what it looks like. I just got to move it over so you can see it. So a lot of people ask questions in Discord, and I'll show you where it is. I just got to bring it up so you can see it here. So this is my Discord channel. It's listed in the description. So if you have questions, you can always ask them here. If I'm not able to answer it, I'm sure there are other people that have experienced it. The other thing is, for those people that are tipping on Patreon or on, I gotta think for a second, what's the other one that I have up there? Patreon or PayPal, pardon me. Thank you very much. It's greatly appreciated. For those tipping in the chat, I also appreciate that. It helps me offset the costs of purchasing more stuff so that I can do more tutorials. So if no one has any more questions today, I'll let you go. Yeah, I blank on the memory of which is which. That's just one of those things. But everyone, take care, be safe, and I'll catch up with you on Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time because I might be at work late. And then I guess in May I might have to skip a Friday because I finally got an appointment to get a COVID vaccine shot. So we'll see how that plays out. So everyone take care, be safe, and I'll catch up with you Monday.